Shalom, and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is Meditation and Mindfulness with Rabbi-Cantor Hilary Chorney.
We are down to the very last couple of weeks where we could use the Omer as the foundation and the setting for what we do meditationally. I suppose we can keep counting Sfirot, but the count is kind of getting there. And because of the way that the grid works, we keep coming back and encircling the same big ideas because, of course, we're meeting on Fridays. And so we've returned again and again to some of the same themes, but themes within themes that differ. So today we're looking, I'll first name the weekly cycle that we're in, which is in this cycle of Yesod, which means connectivity to the rabbis who define these Sfirot in a mystical and spiritual sense. Yesod otherwise might mean foundation, but connectivity is the relational, horizontal way of thinking about how to be in an I-thou relationship with God and with others during this time. The spirit of Yesod is connectivity. Within connectivity today, we're marking this notion of Hod. Hod, which would otherwise mean splendor, but which we've been saying means some sort of a humility, a contraction, a tzimtzum. What is this idea of a humility or a contraction? Probably a contraction of the self within the idea of connectivity. For that, we're going to go into our meditation time space. So first I'll invite you to get settled in your seats. If you haven't yet, begin to pay attention to your breath and the way that it's settling within you. Feel it reach the deepest parts of your lungs. With each release, a new chance, again, to fill every millimeter of that internal space that welcomes air with each breath. And from that space, other things too can begin to settle, like your shoulders and your hips, settling over the centered spine. The soles of your feet settling on the ground. Your eyelids settling into a hazy gaze, or perhaps closing completely, leaving you to your internal world and to that screen space on the back of your eyelids, that third eye space, where visualizing anything is possible. As you find that your feet are settled and your seat is settled, and your breath is settled and your eyes are settled, I invite you to let other things settle within you as well. If you have a thought or a feeling cross through your mind, go ahead and gently tap on that thought or that feeling. Categorize it. This is a thought, or this is a feeling. Put it in a proverbial file drawer and let it go. It's gone. Take a few moments to practice that noting of thoughts and of feelings. Again, if they cross through your mind, you'll gently tap on them like a feather tapping on the edge of a crystal glass, that light. Just say, this is a thought. This is a feeling, and let it go. When we are alone in quietude, it's hard to be anything but self-conscious. You're probably more aware in this seated state than in any other place or time of just how straight your posture is. Aware of how tired your brain feels or how awake you feel. You're probably more self-conscious and self-aware about the clothes that you have on your skin right now, because in this quiet space, as thought settle and breath settles, we also start to become aware of other things on our person. I call it the things touching our skin, our socks, our shirts and sweaters, even glasses resting on the face. There's a delicate balance between this self-awareness and letting go of that self-awareness in this space. Letting go because, like any thought or feeling, thoughts and feelings about ourselves can be a distraction from just existing. Just existing with no judgment. In this space, that is our challenge, to exist with no judgment of the self, to let go of self-awareness, to focus instead on a sense of achdut and oneness. We are all breathing the same air. We are all choosing to meditate together. This quality of Hod as a temperance of the quality of Yesod. In other words, this idea of humility that exists within connectivity is a challenge in the opposite direction, one that pushes us to self-awareness, the kind of self-awareness that is the key to changing how we are present in a space. Here in the meditative zone, although we share a room with others, the space is ours, the time is ours. It belongs to us, and we are gifted with the quiet and lack of judgment that come from letting go of the self. Being in connection with other people requires a different kind of self-effacement. It is the kind of self-effacement that allows for a splendid tzimtzum of the self, a remarkable contraction of ourselves in the face of others. When we share a conversation, a family or a life, a date, good company, we share a drink. When we share and we are in shared company, the gift of being with a friend, a companion, a family member, a mentor or a mentee, a colleague. When we are with people whom we love, and when we are in the company of people who challenge us, every one of those occasions is marked by how much space we are taking up. Every episode of connectivity in our lives is colored and marked by how much space we are taking up. As I close the commentary and Torah part of this meditation and move us into the quiet, self-reflective space, I invite you to recall a time when you were in conversation with somebody who modeled this splendid humility, who contracted themselves, not so much that they disappeared, but so much that you could fill the container of that shared, connected time and space, and fill it with as much as you needed to fill it, because humans have needs in connected spaces. In the course of a connected conversation or a time, we often take turns filling the space, contracting ourselves. For the purposes of this meditation, I want you to recall a time where someone graced you with deep humility and tzimtzum, a self-effacement that made space for you to do self-care in the container that they made as they held back. Re-witness that holding back. Note what a gift it was. And begin to think about the contours of what that connected party did to build such a memorable moment with you. As you begin to rise back to the surface, slowly swimming back towards consciousness and awareness of where you are, who you're with. You return to the time outside this meditative break. I'll close with a story. Where I grew up, we had a half acre of land, just land. There was a horse barn on it. And mostly it was just flat, empty space, place to pull in, place where I learned to do my first U-turn in a car because it was just empty. There was nothing to hit. It was a field, actually two, divided by a fence. And on the side of the field, nearest to the street, one day, I found what looked like a vine growing on the ground. Turns out that it was a volunteer plant, some kind of a gourd. I asked my dad if he had planted anything, and he said no. That's what we call a volunteer plant. We don't know why or how, but the gourd just started growing there. I asked if we had to weed it and clear it out, especially because we often drove through that little space. And he said, no, let's just see how big it gets. And for a while, we just had a pumpkin growing on our lower yard in the middle of Southern California. We hadn't asked for it. It was just there. We didn't know how big it would get or when it would just die on the vine, which eventually it did because we let it grow and never trimmed and never took it away. It was so cool, but there was no control. We couldn't say that there would ever be a pumpkin there again, and as far as I know, there wasn't and won't be. We are not volunteer plants. We're not wildflowers. We are chosen, planted, trimmed, watered, curated by ourselves, by the people who mold us, the people who molded us past tense, the ones who shape us today, experiences like meditations that shape us too. We are cared for deeply. And the parts of ourselves that we trim back in order to sustain ourselves, and the work that we do in community to remind one another to hold back sometimes, or to trim ourselves in the presence of connectivity to make space for others, that is what makes for flourishing, both for ourselves individually and, to continue the metaphor, as bouquet. May this be a Shabbat of splendid holding back, where you begin to think about what parts of yourselves are so worth trimming for the sake of sustenance, and so that all the rest of not just you, but those who you are connected to can stand out as well. Shabbat Shalom.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.